when we're talking about books that my students relate to, I'd like to recommend some poetry books. Adolescents love to write poetry, but usually they write love poetry that's really pretty sappy because they don't have the experience, they don't have the maturity to know what love is, and really what they're mostly writing about is lust. And so I want to move them beyond that to expand their vision of what love is. And so oftentimes I'll recommend to them, or after school I show a lot of movies that I think are just amazing movies. And one is Il Postino, The Postman, that talks about the fictional life of Pablo Neruda when he was exiled from Chile and lived on an island in Italy. And it's about a postman who just falls, a country bumpkin, who falls in love with the most beautiful woman on the island and goes to Pablo Neruda to learn how to write poetry to her to win her heart. The poetry, and the movie's in Italian, so my students have to read the subtitles. Again, we're reading a movie. My students fall in love with that poetry. So I have lots of books of poetry by Pablo Neruda and Amado Nervo, a Mexican poet that they don't know about. And we read and imitate a lot of his poetry, the love poetry as well as his odes to like ordinary things, like to salt or to lizards or to bicycles. And then they have to write their odes before we get into Shakespeare. Another book that I love that really connects to my immigrant students and my English learners, because it's bilingual, is Cool Salsa by Lori Carlson. Her poetry just sings to them, as does poetry by Pat Mora and by Sandra Cisneros. Lots of people read House on Mango Street and think they know Sandra Cisneros, but at a convention I was at a few years ago, she got up and said, "I don't know about the rest of you, but I moved from Mango Street about 20 years ago." And her writing since then really shows how she's grown as a writer. Her poetry is just amazing. And my students gobble her up too, as though they were at a banquet.